This week on Supercars Talk, I run through some of the latest news and I have a viewer question to answer. With the break we've got in between Darwin and Townsville rounds, I thought it'd be a good time to have a look at some of the news that's happening at the moment. So probably the biggest talking point at the moment is the silly season. Really, there's a lot of drivers off contract. Endless talk about what's happening with DJR Team Penske and Chaz Mostert. Basically, DJR Team Penske, everyone kind of thought that it was Coulthard that was kind of up in the air. Tim Cindric was out at Darwin and he threw a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons and said, well, maybe Chaz might be going to the US. No surprise, Chaz, you know, his girlfriend is from the US. Actually, fiance, I think they're about to get married. She's from the US. He kind of loves NASCAR, so, you know, and with Penske, it's a great team to go for. I don't actually follow NASCAR, but I have heard Penske are doing reasonably well over there. I'd prefer to see him in IndyCar, just my preference. But all the seats at Penske are quite full up for IndyCar, whereas apparently they can slot him into the Xfinity series, which is their version of Super 2, I suppose. They can slot him in there and get a bit of experience before he steps up to the main game, the Monster series it is at the moment, I think. So that's probably the big, you know, either of those two seats they're the seats that everybody wants. And then also, apparently there's a little bit of unrest at Triple Eight. Van Gisbergen's contract's up at the end of the year, but it's hard to know if you leave there, where do you move to? You know, Triple Eight haven't had the best year, but then, you know, you'd be getting paid pretty well at Triple Eight. Would you take the risk? You know, I don't think someone like Erebus would want to sign a Van Gisbergen. I think they're quite happy with their lineup. Don't think they'd have the money to pay for a Van Gisbergen either. And really, if you know, Tickford's probably the next best option. That's a hard one. Would you want to step away from Triple Eight to go to Tickford? Who knows? At the moment, Tickford is probably getting slightly better results than what Triple Eight is, but yeah, the only thing I would think is that Triple Eight, you know, Shane would want to step out of kind of Jamie's shadow, and I don't think that's going to get any easier with, you know, Jamie being a team owner. So that kind of, you know, probably the biggest, you know, piece of the puzzle is what Scott McLaughlin does. Whether he stays or goes, and then if he's staying, how long is he staying for? So if I was Penske, I'd be tempted to say, look, you know, Scott, we want you to stay for another year here, and then we'll look at doing the NASCAR thing, and then I'd probably want to shift Coulthard out and get someone in, a Chaz Mostert, maybe possibly. You know, Chaz is a proven performer. You might want to look at bringing in, say, an Anton, or, you know, possibly even Todd Hazelwood, someone like that, who, I'm not knocking Coulthard much, but I don't think he's got quite that, you know, level to win a championship. He's a good, solid performer. He's a great number 2 to Scott. But has he got that, you know, that killer kind of to take it for the championship? So that's where I'd be looking. Okay, so then that kind of brings me in a roundabout way, Chaz Mostert. So what I'm hearing, he's a bit like Winterbottom last year. He's kind of unhappy where he's at Tickford. You know, they probably haven't been. He's been there a long time. Probably kind of, you know, they've been pulling back on drivers' salaries, so they're probably not in the same position to offer him the same money. Kind of like what happened with Mark Winterbottom last year. You know, the money's not there, the results kind of haven't been there. Everybody's talking about him going to Penske. The big rumour at the moment is possibly him going to Walkinshaw. Now, you kind of go, yeah, why would you step out of Tickford and go to Walkinshaw? I think probably the big thing is if Courtney's out at Walkinshaw, which is possibly the likely scenario there, that frees up a big chunk of money for them in, kind of what they've been paying Courtney. So that, they'd probably get Chaz on kind of half of what Courtney's been getting paid, and then you get a big chunk of money for development on the car. Possibly, who knows what kind of engineering and things like that they're looking at. They might even, they can make promises to him, like, that Andretti or, United Autosports is going to play a bigger role in the future to try and bring those cars up to speed. They're not far off the mark, and we've seen what the steps that Tickford took from last year to this year. So it is quite possible, and having someone hungry in that, not knocking their current drivers, but Courtney doesn't seem to be the kind of guy who, if the car's a little bit off, he just drives around kind of thing. And I'm not sure if Pye's quite at that top level that we hope that he was. So, maybe a Chaz in that team could, kind of invigorate it and elevate them. Next time out at Townsville, the Super 2 Series is running. A couple of additions to the grid for that round. Tim Blanchard is going to run in a Brad Jones car, and Jack Perkins is going to run in an Eggleston car. Now, why is this news? Well, it's interesting. These guys are both co-drivers for the endurance races, and I'm surprised not more teams take advantage of this. Like, granted, guys like Tanner and Lowndes probably don't need to, but I'm a bit surprised that someone, Triple Eight with all of their resources and that, I'm a bit surprised that they don't enter those guys in, maybe 1 or 2 rounds. You don't have to. They're already running Super 2 cars and things like that. Run an extra car for, a couple of rounds, and have the guys alternate. Just keep them a bit race ready. Tander, he's gone and done things like TCR and some GT racing and that this year. I don't think Lowndes has driven anything since the 12-hour. So, these guys know what they're doing, but, there's a bit of keep them match fit. And, I'm a bit surprised even, you guys like Tickford, run a second car for a few rounds and maybe just alternate, Caruso and Moffat and that. Just, give them a chance to, drive. They're not current cars in the Super 2 series. They're obviously, they're FGX Falcons and VF Commodores, but at least, keeps them a bit match fit in, basically the car that they're going to be driving in the endurance races. So, it's a good step there from, Brad Jones, or I think it's more Blanchard organising these ones, so, than actually Brad Jones running it. Just to try and keep himself match fit and probably, have a bit of fun. And yeah, good on, kind of Jack Perkins getting himself out there for a run. Would definitely help them come the endurance races. Speaking of the endurance races, the calendar next year looks like we're heading for another big shake-up. There's talk, Sandown round being later in the year, there's a lot that, they don't want Bathurst as the first endurance round, but then we've put Sandown towards the end of the year. It's a bit strange, I thought. But they're talking next year, the calendar's probably going to be out at Townsville, and Sandown going back to a sprint race, and possibly having the pre-Bathurst endurance race at the Bend, which is the new facility there down, I think it's a bit north of Adelaide, about an hour and a half out of Adelaide. The track there and the facilities weren't designed for endurance racing. Great track and facilities. Not sure how it's going to go. The sprint races there last year were a bit, you know, they were playing on the short track and, you know, kind of, you know, having the 25-ish cars out there, they kind of spread out, and you know, it's to me, the Bathurst track is a bit big for such a small grid. It's just that because it is Bathurst, you know, you kind of forgive it. I think tracks like Sandown and the Gold Coast, kind of with their shorter laps, lend themselves a bit more to these smaller grids and an endurance race. I'm not sure, and then, you know, they're talking of running the full big circuit at the Bend, which I think it's over 7Ks, which Bathurst is only just over 6K. So, you know, there's a lot of room to, you know, everyone to get stretched out. Be interesting to see what happens. Be interesting to see how it goes. Also, it's an hour and a half out of Adelaide. Whether you're going to get big crowds there or not is, you know, Sandown always gets good crowds because it is close to Melbourne. So, you know, it's nice and easily accessible for such a big population, and they've got great grandstand and things like that there. It'd be interesting to see, and also the talk is that we're possibly losing a round in Victoria as well, or potentially 2 rounds. Talking Phillip Island and Winton don't have contracts. A lot of people are complaining about Phillip Island going, it's not that I don't care, it's more, I think the racing's better at Winton. It's, okay, Phillip Island looks great and that on paper. Facilities look great, it's an awesome track, etc. But I think on a pure racing scale of things, I think I'd prefer to see them go to Winton. And the crowds are great at Winton. And, you know, the crowds at Phillip Island aren't there. And there's a lot of people saying, oh, well, you know, the MotoGP and that, you know, they get great crowds. It's a bit different though. MotoGP is an international category. It's not, you know, if you're in Victoria and you want to go to a Supercars round, you can go to the Grand Prix, you can go to Sandown, you can go to Winton, you can go to Phillip Island. And I'll tell you what, if out of those 4, Winton's probably, you know, for me, it's the geographic location isn't too bad, but I, you know, kind of put Sandown, AGP, and then Winton and Phillip Island down the bottom of the list because, you know, it's a pain in the ass to get in and out of the joint. You know, it's a long way away for me. Yeah, and also Winton, you can nearly see the whole track from kind of any vantage point. At Phillip Island, it's a bit like going to the Grand Prix or, you know, to Adelaide or Surfers or something like that, where you can only see a very limited amount from there. So, in summary, I think I'll be sad if we lose Winton. Phillip Island, well, you know, if they have to cut a round out, that's probably the one that I'd be least sad about out of the whole calendar. So it's on to viewer question time. This one comes in from Glenn TB86. So it's a bit of, it's kind of a 2-parter kind of, I guess. So I'll cover it off in 2 parts. The first part is, when is Holden going to switch to the Camaro? And is the Mustang being so good going to force a change for Holden? So there's kind of a couple of things here. Well, yeah, we had a parity adjustment at the last round again. You know, the Holden got a little bit of a helping hand. Yeah, so I don't want to talk too much about the parity on this one because we could go on for hours and hours and hours about it. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are a bit butthurt over, you know, all of these changes during the year. I assume the guys at Supercars that are calling the shots now, they've got their reasons to do it. What I'm hearing is that Holden is committed to the Commodore for a couple more years, at least. Now, the Camaro, what the issues I can see for this is, everyone's saying, is Holden going to do this? Now, the issues I can see, the Camaro is being brought in by Walkinshaw. So they import the car from the US and then they convert it from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. It's not a right-hand drive car, from the factory. That's done by Walkinshaw, which they're a third-party thing. Granted, they're being sold through Holden dealer or HSV dealers, which are usually part of a Holden dealer, but it's not actually a Holden car. It is, it comes through as a HSV or Walkinshaw or however they badge it. But it's, it doesn't have Holden badges on it. It has Chev badges, and I think you get a HSV badge on the keyring or something like that. It's not actually a Holden. So I think probably if the Camaro gets done, it will be done separately to Holden. It'll be done as a Walkinshaw, possibly, GM might get involved, a bit like, Ford Motorsport over in the US got involved with the Mustang. But I don't think it'll be a direct Holden thing, and I think we might, if they do go ahead with the Camaro, you might actually see Commodores up against Camaros out there. It'd be interesting to see, but at the moment, all the noise coming out of Walkinshaw is they don't want it to happen because, like, you've had to modify the Mustang to fit it around the car of the future chassis. They've said that you've got to modify the Camaro too much, and they don't want it to look like, an oversized Aussie racing car. They want it to look like a lot closer, like what, the Commodore and the Altima and that look like, where, the Mustang is stretched to fit around there. They think the Camaro will have to be too far stretched. So to answer that I don't think the Camaro is going to happen before the next set of rules, and it's looking like 2021 before that comes in. Potentially, if there is a right-hand drive Camaro by then, maybe Holden might get involved. If not, I think it's going to be a separate thing that Walkinshaw's doing, maybe with one or two other teams getting involved. That's where we're at the moment with that. Now, the next part of the question was, will Kelly Racing look to the 370Z style body as a way to overcome their piss poor performance in the Altima? Okay, their performance has been lacking. I don't think it's all down to aero. I still think a lot of it has to do with engine. The Nissan had a few aero tweaks over Christmas. And no one's kind of running at them, or they're not running going, hey, we need more changes to bring us in line, with the Commodore and Mustang in that respect. The big thing for them was the centre of gravity changes, and I think they're still probably lacking a bit in the engine, and more should have been done back in 2013 when all of this started to, bring kind of the Nissan in line with the others. I know the Volvo had a few more freedoms that the Nissan wasn't allowed, and so the other big thing with this is that Nissan is not funding the Kellys anymore. They're fully out, so the Kellys are doing this by themselves. That's probably another reason why they don't want to do too many aero changes, because I think the budget's a bit light on this year. So without the manufacturer money, I don't think they're going to be changing to a 370Z. I think you're more likely to see something like them changing to a Kia Stinger. If Kia decide to come in, it keeps getting rumoured. It's kind of a logical car, but nothing's happened as of yet. And also, this wasn't part of the question, but I've read a lot of people saying, Kelly should cut back to 2 cars, or they should, go and buy Mustangs off someone, or, things like that. So their setup is, they're set up to build the cars themselves, manufacture all the parts and that themselves. So if they go and buy Commodores, they have to, go and get the aero kits from 888. They can't build their own, so that's part of their manufacturing just out the door on that. And kind of a little bit similar with the Mustangs, you can build your own parts, but I think Phil Monday's been building all the parts for the Mustangs as well. And then they need to throw, if they change over to a different car as well, they basically have to throw out all their development on the engines and everything, throw out a heap of engines. It's not just a matter of, you know, spending 200 grand or whatever and, you know, changing the body kit. You've got to throw out an inventory of engines. They've got 4 cars, so they'd have, I'd imagine they've got at least 8 engines, you know, kicking around. And if, you know, the figures of 150,000 each, you know, that's a fair bit of coin to just kind of, and it's not like you can really sell the engines anywhere. You know, Matt White Motorsport might take a couple for a Super 2, but you know, you're a bit limited. You can't just, you know, sell them to the bloke down the street and recoup a bit of your cost. So after all that talking, short answer, no, I can't see them changing over the 370. That covers off everything for this week. Next week we'll be back to normal with a preview for the Townsville round. Would enjoy some more questions. Gives me some topics to talk about. So keep them coming if you've got any. And until next time, I'll see you later.
Put away your inhibitions. Let the beast in you just get loose. We all young, wild, and